Hello everybody, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be talking about the OEM bikes versus the factory bikes and MX bikes. Now listen, I know that's a lot of bikes, but trust me, you guys can take it. Today we're going to be going through a pretty intense topic in the MX bikes community right now. And basically, if you guys don't know what's going on, which is merely impossible, OEM bikes have been the base model bikes that we've used for the entirety of even my MX bikes lifetime, which is a lot bigger and longer than a lot of other people. So basically, they are the staple in the MX bikes community and known as the bikes. And just recently, 1110 is a new group of bike developers, to say the least, and they developed themselves a new scheme of bikes called the factory bikes, and those are doing pretty well in the grand scheme of things throughout the community. Today I'll be sharing either my opinions or just proven facts and notes and jot down little things about both sides, and you guys can really make your decision. I'm just here to kind of put my input in on the topic, and my input meaning not really my opinion, which is normally what that would mean. It's just what I've written down here on both sides. It's just facts about both sides and kind of even out the which one's worse and which one's better conversation, because honestly they both have great cases and it just depends on what style of play you like better. Both bikes can be better to any individual person easily. How this will work, I have 6 jot notes down for both factory and OEM bikes. I'll say one of each, kind of go over both the topics, and then we can move on to the next one, etc, etc, etc. So basically the first pro or jot down note, the first little line of info I have here about the OEMs is the realism of the OEMs. Realism plays a big part in these bikes and just how they work. A lot of the stuff that the OEM team focuses on is getting the real life specs to translate into the game, and that's huge. It gives us variation and variety through our bikes that we have, and that is huge. Every bike's different and they have their own characteristics, and it's supposed to be based off of real life. Love that realism. The tires that they use, the OEMs that is, they work a lot better in my opinion, and are probably a lot just more realistic in a virtual sense as far as realism you can get in a video game, I guess. Then obviously the biggest thing, the physics. There's a lot of new changes with the newer version of the OEMs with the physics to help out with just about everything that has to do with keeping it more on the real side, which I typically and really enjoy in games. And my first note about the factory bikes is just how fun they are. There's a lot of freedom and a lot goes into this like whole scheme, but that's basically what we're gonna be talking about. The factory bikes is just a bunch of fun. When you're riding the factory bikes, there is just more enjoyable times with it, I should say, because honestly with the OEMs there's a lot of trying to improve and just overall progression, but with the factory bikes, if you're like good enough at the game, that will suit you already. You're not trying to adapt, get different, whatever it is. You're just trying to just sit there and enjoy the features on the bike that allow you to have fun on them. They're just set and good for a bunch of fun. They make it a lot more enjoyable, and it kind of minimizes all of the whack stuff that might frustrate you. Now moving on to the second note of both of the OEM versus factory. Whole debate here is honestly for the OEMs, this is pretty huge to me, but every bike is separate. Every bike is just different. There's obviously that variety. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, the factory bike is one bike. The 250 is one bike. It's translated through all the rest, just with a different model. And with the OEM, it's a lot different. There's a lot more customization characteristics in each thing that comes with each bike. A lot different things to focus on, a lot different ways of riding. There's just multiple different things with the OEMs, and I find that, overall better than just having one bike. I know some people prefer it the other way around, and that's perfectly fine. Personally, I just appreciate that the thought goes into every single one of these bikes to be different and just thought out differently, and like I said, try to be matching real life specs. Just goes a long way with the way that the game works and just the way that these bikes, I guess, work as well. What I'm trying to get across is I like variety, and with the OEM bikes, there's a lot more variety between every single bike than just riding one bike with different models and plastics on it. And the next thing that comes along with the factory bikes is just, honestly, it's going to sound like I'm bashing it, but it's just unrealistic physics and tires, which kind of plays into that fun factor. Like I said, I think the whole motto for these factory bikes are to have fun. There's just more power, and I'm not saying it's unrealistic power. Factory bikes in real life, like factory supported, racing teams and everything like that, they have some crazy bikes and crazy stuff in their bikes, but it's just unrealistic, just physics and tires that kind of give you a false sense of speed or whatever, but it lets you and allows you to have a ton of fun. The tires are really grippy. They work really well on every terrain, but just a lot just goes into the factory versus OEM debate. And one of them is realism versus unrealistic and fun versus learning. Do you want to learn the OEMs, or do you want to just learn the basics of the game and then hop on the factory bikes and have a bunch of fun and minimize all those things that might, you know, frustrate you or piss you off? And something that also gives the OEMs a little bit more variety, and this will lead into my next one, is there's those one-off bikes, whether it's the, you know, TM 144, the Beta 300, I believe that's a bike, and then there's like some 430. I think it's a TM 430 in one of the classes. Honestly, there's just those one-off things that might, you know, find a bike that goes under the radar or something like that that you might really enjoy, but just a weird one-off bike that you probably aren't going to see with the factory bikes. Now, I could be wrong. 1110 could be working on some sort of electric bike or some trail bikes, you know, whether it's enduro, whatever it is. I'm sure that just currently there's a lot more variation between the way that you can utilize a bike. Everything like that could just play into the OEM team right now with a lot more, and this kind of plays in, like I said, with the variety. There's those one-off bikes that you know, you can really find yourself enjoying. Then on to my next point about the factory bikes is, like I mentioned, how the unrealistic tires and stuff. I mean, dude, the sand is so fun on factory bikes. You go on a sand track on factory bikes and you will be enjoying it. Those things can absolutely fly and just absolutely adore your time. All right, honestly, you would sit there and you could get caught up. 40 minutes could go past and you could have sworn it's only been 10. My point here is kind of just the sand is not as viable on a OEM bike as it is with these factory bikes and these tires. And moving on to the next point, which I think is actually a pretty strong one. Like I mentioned, the OEMs have been around for a lot longer. They've been used as the priority or quote unquote main bikes for quite a bit, and that has led to tracks being customized for the OEMs. They work and test the tracks with these OEMs, and so everything is kind of based off OEMs, and there's a lot more availability to just everything around the OEM, you know, area or central, if you want to call it. But a lot of this game has been and will be based off the OEMs. I think Stone Rider's making the new Supercross season coming up here is going to base it off these bikes. The OEMs, once again, will be prioritized in series like that as well. That's another thing. You can get 1110 series. They're all over the place with the factory bikes, but you can just race the official, like, quote unquote aerial racing league with the OEMs. So that also takes priority there too. The OEM bikes kind of just been the way to do it for the past while, and then it'll probably stick that way for a while. One thing for the factory bikes that is next to mention up on their list is the balance. Every bike's the same. So like I mentioned earlier, the bike's the same, but the model and plastics are changed for each bike, which some people, that is amazing too. For me, I prefer my variety with the OEMs, but not saying I don't dislike the balance aspect of the factory bikes. You're not sitting there and trying to learn 19 different bikes. You're sitting there trying to just get the one down, figure out everything it's going to do, customize it once, use that setup everywhere, because it's all the same. It might look different, but there's just a lot more balance in that aspect of the game is the factory bikes. There's just balance with it. There is steady gameplay, and honestly, I just think that overall, I would just prefer the variety, but it gets close because I like balance and not a whole lot changes with the factory bikes. A lot of it is kind of just the same, and that is very, very much prized in other people's eyes for sure. Moving towards the back end of this list now, I mentioned earlier with the OEM bikes, everything seems to be kind of based off of them. The game kind of just goes around the OEM world. There are so many more, just availability for more mods and customization options for these OEMs. The OEMs have paints available in the MX bikes mods, different tires, so you can go out and get, I think I run Hoosier, and everyone asks me how I get them, and I got them for my team, and I'm not about to just like leak them or let them out or whatever, because I don't know the basic whatever. So go to my team Discord if you guys want to get the Hoosier tires, or ask about them at least, because I'm not sure what the restrictions or anything are on that. But just the variety you can have is so nice. Even with model swaps, you can look at the OEM supporters and stuff like that. The OEM team puts time to model swap, put hand guards on your bikes for you, and just do a bunch of random, you know, get off, one-off stuff to like the other bikes. And there's just a lot more customization involved, and I think that that's a big part of a lot lot of people as well, is they want that that variety in customization, not just in a bike. And on the OEM side of things, I'd say like the new aspect and change in MX bikes has been great. No one has ever contested the OEM team to this extent. We've had a lot of like, you know, CR 110s or whatever it is, CRF 110s, big bores come out, you know, just fun like 125s, KX 85s that were made not poorly, but just not with as much attention to it. And the 1110 team, I don't know, I think they're just called 1110. 1110 has come out with some amazing bikes, great quality, and it's a huge change of pace, and a lot of people seem to enjoy that. And if you do, amazing. I mean, that adds a whole new side to MX bikes, and I love that, the fact that it just brings a new aspect and, like I said, a new change in MX bikes. It's not needed or anything, but with the game, you know, maybe possibly getting a little stale with the lack of updates. Pabobo. Sure, the game could get a little boring or, like I said, stale, because honestly, all we had was the OEM bikes. Now you can go on to the factory bikes, the OEMs, the everything. Everything's different, and there's a huge change that comes along with the factory bikes, and I'm here for it. Last thing about the OEM bikes is I'm gonna bring him up. The electric bikes, man. They are so freaking fun, so funny, amazing, good. You can do some crazy stuff with them, and if 1110 made an electric bike, I'm sure that would be a bunch of fun, but they just didn't and haven't. And like I said, they could be working on it right now. I have no clue. This isn't shade towards factory. I'm just saying that I like that the OEM guys accounted for electric bikes, because they are a bunch of fun in this game, and definitely recommend riding and using them because they are a bunch of fun. And they kind of tie the bow all together for the factory bikes this time around. And this is the last point of the video. Is it just the unrealistic physics in tires? Sure, they're unrealistic and they're a bunch of fun, and that all kind of pays off already, but they help minimize the physics and funky stuff that happens. Thanks to the lack of updates from Pabobo, we are seeing that we don't really need updates. We can continue with the track creators are doing a great job keeping the community alive, and then the 1110 factory bikes have done a great job of adapting to the current game physics and not need an update to just give us a very, very good base of steady physics and something that kind of minimizes the weird, funky stuff, the Pabobo physics, if you will. That's kind of what they're called. So I think that's another huge thing that's overlooked about the factory bikes, is as much as unrealistic or as unwanted that they are for some people. All right, I'm not saying all people. I think actually a majority right now is with the factory bikes. I hear a lot more about the factory bikes than the OEM, but I don't think that the OEM guys or people or voters or fans really understand or appreciate as much as factory bikes have done for game physics and to minimize the funky stuff, the Pabobo physics, the one-off like front wheel gets tugged over to the left. Like, it just doesn't really happen. And the factory bikes are a huge, you know, thanks to that, and they made the OEM team step up and try to you know, improve as well. So that's also pretty cool to have that competition. It kind of ties into my last fact with the new aspect and change in MX bikes. Like I said, we've never really seen the OEM team contested this heavily, and obviously making them step up their work and also the giving the game a little change of pace. Anyways, that's kind of my piece on it. I just kind of cut across with a bunch of facts and kind of cross over, like, you know, 6 facts for each. And honestly, I don't care if you guys say I'm hating on the factory bikes. I like them both, but I prefer the OEM bikes, and I guess that's kind of why probably bunches of people are here. But I prefer the OEM bikes for sure, and I'll have videos out on them soon on like just different stuff related to it, and hopefully you guys will enjoy those. But until then, take it easy. Go ahead, leave a like on the video, consider subscribing, would really mean a lot, and that'll be all for me. Thank you guys for watching. Doses.